Cole Palmer has been simply unplayable this year, whether it's a goal in the Euro final, an eye-opening pass, a magical dribble, a game-winning goal, a deceptive touch. Palmer can do anything. In this video, we will analyse more specifically his runs into the box and how he finds space, which are both huge parts of Palmer's game. First, we are going to start with his runs into the box. Looking at this chart of his shots from the last season, we can see a majority of his goals and shots come from in the box or just outside. He often creates space to get these shots off with strategic movement based on where the other team's defensive midfielder is. For example, Palmer does a critical scan in this play to ensure he can turn and receives the ball beautifully. Notice how Palmer didn't kill the ball and push it, but received the ball in a way that almost seems like a dribble. This allows him to turn faster, which buys him extra space to make a play. Then after he plays the ball wide, and if we skip forward a few seconds, he finds himself in this situation. Notice how the Arsenal defensive midfielder is goal side. He is protecting the space in front of the backline, so Palmer knows running into that area means he'd be easily covered. Since the midfielder is protecting this area, that means Palmer looks for space to the side. In this case, the space to his right is covered, but there is space to his left, so Palmer runs into it. But notice how he does. He waits for his teammate to look up, to make sure he can time his run well, which will make it difficult for the defender to react, and then accelerates with a change of pace into the area. This burst buys him the time to get there first and have a shot. Now in this play, we can see Palmer is next to the defensive midfielder. The same concepts that we've just talked about with the timing and burst still apply here, but the difference is where Palmer will run. Since he's closer to the midfielder, he'll try to run in front of him and get into the space around the penalty spot, instead of to the side. This is because since they are so close, even the smallest of bursts would lose the midfielder, as he'd have to react quickly to have the chance of blocking the cross. Also, the backline will drift back into the 6-yard box, so that means the space between the defensive midfielder and the backline is there. In this case, he does get in front of the defender, and if the cross came to him, he'd likely be first and have a dangerous shot. When Palmer is in front of the defensive midfielder, then the process is a little different. First, Palmer keeps running to make sure he maintains the space he has from the midfielder. Then, once he's close to the box, he'll look at the back four for any gaps. Typically, a back four usually has responsibilities for crosses. The strong side fullback goes to press the winger, strong side centre-back, trying to block the cross to the front post. The weak side centre-back has to mark the striker, and the weak side fullback marks the winger. Each player has their own focus, so Palmer being beyond the defensive midfielder means there will usually be a dangerous space to attack. The space usually depends on the striker's movement, and in this case, the striker seems to not make a run to the front post, which leaves a space there. Palmer sees the space as usual, and right as his teammate's foot goes up to cross, he accelerates into the space, and with a delivery to him, he is likely scoring. Again here we can see Palmer in front of the defensive midfielder and running forward to get into the box with space. This time, the striker makes a near-post run, which frees a huge gap for Palmer to run into. Once his teammate plays the ball through, he has a burst of speed again anticipating the cross, but this time the cross doesn't come. However, he would have had a chance to score in a good position if his teammate played the ball across first time. Now we will cover how Cole Palmer finds space. The main thing we will see is he finds space based on how the defence is set up. We will start with his movement in build-up. As we can see on this play, when the ball is towards the opposite side, Palmer stays central, but notice how when the ball is swinging his side, he moves wide. This is because the way United are defending is they have defensive midfielders marking the Chelsea players in the pockets and have a narrow front three to prevent build-up centrally. There is no space for Palmer to receive, but as the playmaker on the team, we always want to get on the ball. Moving into a wider region where there is space means now he has a chance to receive the ball, but also create space for his teammates. In this scenario, Garnacho pulls wide to try to cover the ball to Palmer, but now the Chelsea midfielder has a pocket of space. The defensive midfielders for United typically don't want to follow players that deep because they want to protect the space in front of the backline. If they do follow Palmer like shown here, then you can see there is a huge gap for the striker to check into. Again, Palmer pulls wide, and notice this time how when he does, Garnacho drops back to cover the passing lane. This means that Reece James has more time now because Garnacho won't press, since he'll then leave Palmer open. Either way, James doesn't take the space and Palmer still receives the ball, but has nothing on, so instead of forcing it, he plays it back to keep possession. Now, if the defence isn't super narrow, then Palmer will remain in the pockets and moves intelligently to be able to receive the ball in between the lines. One thing he does frequently is go high and stay with the centre-backs, then check off them into space. And then he checks into space. Casemiro can't see Palmer, as he's on his blind side, and Palmer is able to receive. Again, on this play, Palmer is with the centre-backs, and once Chelsea recycle the ball, he checks off the defender and has space to play. Centre-backs don't want to follow someone that deep because if they get beat, then the defence is under a lot of pressure. Also, Palmer bursts away suddenly, so even if they do want to follow, sometimes he's too quick. Another thing Palmer does is if the midfield line for the opposing team is very aggressive while pressing, then he'll position himself just behind them. This is because when they press, they likely will be focused on Chelsea's two holding midfielders and will likely forget Palmer, as he's on their blind side. A key concept is being on the blind side because it will be more difficult for the defending midfielders to always be aware of where you are. And as he receives the ball in this play, the centre-back has the bravery to step, but Palmer shows his magic. This is another reason defenders don't want to get tight to Palmer, because he can easily turn them easily. He is just a nightmare to defend against. His final third movement is a bit different, but just as fascinating. One thing he does is when the ball is swinging to the opposite side, he doesn't get drawn towards the ball and sits in his half space. You can see how open he is on this play, as the defence isn't worrying about him since he's far from the ball. The reason he does this is since the defence has to shift to cover the space on the opposite side. That means if Chelsea are able to switch the ball, he will be in a pocket of space near the box, which is where he thrives. He's thinking a couple steps ahead to get on the ball, which is why he is so intelligent. Then, since he's been maintaining his position, we can see how open he is, and if the Chelsea player was able to play the ball, then Palmer would have likely scored with his finishing ability. Even though Palmer stays in the half space, if there is space for him to check once the ball swings to his side, he will check, but only if there is space. For example, here Palmer is in the half space high, but there is a lot of space to check into, which he ends up doing. Some players prefer to stay high and only try to receive the ball in dangerous areas, but Palmer wants to be on the ball and create, so if he has the chance, he'll drop into space to try to make a play from deep. This time Casemiro follows him, so he has to knock it down. But again, look at the space the striker has to now check. His movement is always benefiting himself or the team. In this play though, Palmer doesn't have much space to check to and has a bit of space in between the lines, so he stays and tries to shuffle to find a passing lane. He is taking whatever the defence is giving. Now we will briefly talk about Palmer's third man runs. In this play, Palmer plays the ball to his midfielder and then waits. Then notice how suddenly when the pass is about to go to the midfielder running in field, he accelerates. He is thinking a step ahead as he already anticipates the pass to the midfielder and is trying to think how he can get the ball to score. You can see Casemiro is ball watching and isn't aware of Palmer's burst. By making this run, if the ball can be played here, then Palmer is through on goal, all from just thinking a second earlier than everyone else. Again here, Palmer waits, and when his midfielder receives the ball, he sprints into the space. Notice how the United player's eyes are again on the ball, and he can't see Palmer sprinting. If the midfielder turned the other way, then Palmer would have been through. The last thing we will cover is Palmer controlling the tempo. I feel this is a very underrated part of his game, and he has been improving it year by year. For example, we can see in this play Palmer has space to take, or even to pass to his teammates sprinting up the field, but instead cuts back. This is because he understands that Chelsea has just won the ball, and even though a forward option is open, it would be in a one-on-one. If Chelsea lost the ball, then they would have to defend a counter in their half, and would be under pressure. Palmer cutting and playing back means Chelsea can establish possession. Then if we forward a couple of seconds, now they are up the pitch with control and can attack. That's all for today. We appreciate you sticking to the end and drop in the comments what players you want to see. Make sure to hit that sub button as well.